Hello there. The US President Donald Trump has isolated the US in his battle against the invisible enemy. Firstly, please give this video a like to give my channel a boost, and I'm always uploading new videos, so please do check back daily. In his battle to overcome this global health crisis, Donald Trump has now announced that he is halting immigration into the US to protect jobs. In a tweet early this morning at 3:06 UK time, he said, "In light of the attack from the invisible enemy, as well as the need to protect the jobs of our great American citizens, I will be signing an executive order to temporarily suspend immigration into the United States." The US president had already put travel restrictions in place for China, Iran, Mexico, Canada, and most of Europe. But this, by the sound of it, will just about shut down all movement into the country. It could also mean no more green cards and work visas being issued. The Democrats are obviously up in arms about this, claiming that Trump is using the crisis as an excuse to fulfill one of his presidential aims, that of vastly reducing immigration, and they called it xenophobic scapegoating. They also claim that such a move will further damage the economy as potential workers are kept out. But Trump's former acting director of US Immigration and Customs Enforcement, Thomas Homan, said that it was the sensible thing to do because it protected opportunities for the US workforce while the crisis played out. And the Republican view seems to be that with 22 million US citizens having lost their jobs in the last month because of the crisis, the priority should be getting them back to work first before bringing in more people to compete for those jobs. So the US now seems to have a real knotty situation on its hands. For a start, there are anti-lockdown protests starting up across the country, with the people saying, "Let us work." And Donald Trump supports that because he wants to get the US economy on the move again. So Trump, who is a Republican, wants to open the individual states up, but close the United States to outsiders. Whereas, as far as I can see, the Democrats want to keep the lockdown going on in individual states, but open up the United States to immigration. And all against a backdrop of the US presidential elections taking place in November. So it looks like Donald Trump sees an economic and jobs recovery as the way to win a second term, while the Democrats are looking for a long economic downturn, together with high unemployment amongst the ranks of US voters, and maybe a boost from continued immigration coupled with a lax postal voting procedures put in place as a result of an extended period of social distancing. But is there not an argument that maintaining movement of people from around the world into the US will inevitably prolong their problems? After all, we keep hearing that the people here in Britain want flights into the UK stopped, don't we? Now, there has been talk that Trump's ban won't apply to medical and farm workers, but those restrictions already in place are pretty stringent, so how much more effect this new move will have is not clear. But one thing does look clearer and clearer by the day, and that is, globalism as we know it is now rightfully a dead duck. Globalism had already been wounded by the worldwide credit crunch in 2008. And back in August last year, writing in The Guardian, Larry Elliot said that globalization as we know it will not survive Trump. And he called that a good thing, and I agree. He pointed out that, hailed as the ultimate in human progress, a model based on loosening the controls on capital and the construction of global supply chains, has spawned recurrent financial crises, fostered corrosive inequality, and worsened the climate emergency. And also, it is clear that those who have done best out of globalisation tend to be the rich and powerful, and they are not going to give up their privileges without a fight. And he also said that there is also going to be an enhanced role for the nation state, the death of which has been exaggerated. It will no longer be good enough for politicians to fob off voters with the idea that globalisation is an unstoppable force of nature against which they are powerless. Telling the public that inequality, industrial decay and stagnant living standards are something they have to suck up is asking for big populist trouble. Now, that Trump effect under the circumstances prevalent just a few months ago would have been a drawn-out affair. But this health and now parallel economic crisis has accelerated that process. The nation-state is now much more central to our lives, as the European Union is discovering. And the people are now waking up to the risks of relying almost totally on countries far away for the things like medicines, healthcare equipment and even food. The global supply chains could suddenly no more fill our shelves and stockrooms just in time. The whole just-in-time supply chain concept unravelled overnight. And even where they continued, human psychology derailed them by stockpiling and hoarding. But just-in-time covers more these days than just the supply chains. It covers most aspects of people's lives. Most people would probably admit that they only get paid every month just in time to pay the bills. They have no savings. Most would probably admit to paying their bills just in time. Or that they get to work just in time. You get the idea. So many people will be rethinking these risk factors as they go forwards. A BBC report on this has Professor Richard Portes, Professor of Economics at London Business School, saying that it seems obvious that things will have to change because firms and people have now realised what risks they have been taking. Professor Portes talked about the hit on the supply chains caused by this healthcare crisis, saying, "Look at trade. Once supply chains were disrupted, people started looking for alternative suppliers at home, even if they were more expensive. If people find domestic suppliers, they will stick with them because of those perceived risks." And international travel is also bound to take a hit, with an inevitable and unwelcome rise in the suspicion of strangers. Something that may well linger on after this crisis has ended. But although globalism, where the movement of people and goods is concerned, might reduce for a long time, the movement of ideas and technology probably won't. For example, I would think that the use of 3D printing will now accelerate so that an item designed in one country can be quickly made in another. And remote conferencing will more and more become the norm. Not just for businesses, but also for governments and even for your virtual visit to the GP. And how long before some eye tests can be reliably conducted at home using your computer? Who knows? And to give all this tech a boost, the government should do all it can to prioritise putting high-grade connectivity in place across the country. Because we will need it to be able to enable a combination of global awareness and local action. And I think that will be the new globalism. Globalism of ideas, but also laws to cover their use. More global connectivity. Globalism where for some time to come only the rich and powerful will be able to move physically freely from country to country. And I say that because the airline industry is already talking about keeping the middle of 3 seats empty, social distancing at airports, and more aircraft cabin deep cleans. This all adds to the cost and hits the availability of seats. And would you fancy sitting in a cramped airline seat for hours with a mask on? And the risks of getting trapped overseas may well put people off too. It's going to be a long time before the airline industry gets anywhere near normal operations. Virgin Australia has already gone under, and will be managed by accountants from Deloitte while it restructures and looks for a buyer, with the rumour mill saying that 3 Chinese firms are looking to snap it up. And anyone fancy a trip on a cruise liner at the moment? And there's another thing that this crisis has thrown up, which is illustrated by the personal protection equipment, or PPE, that our health and social care professionals use. And it absolutely hammers home the importance to people of the nation state. When this whole crisis came to light, every country that could afford it was trying to stockpile PPE, and that will continue for the duration. But there is a global shortage of the stuff, even though I would reckon that every manufacturer capable of manufacturing the stuff is running at max capacity. But people don't look at that. They look at their own country, with the question at the forefront of people's minds being, is there enough PPE for me and for those that might need to look after me? Remember, people in the UK got hot under the collar to learn that the French authorities had impounded a batch of the stuff destined for Britain, and that a plane destined to bring loads of PPE in from Turkey has been grounded there. But now today we hear that the UK is still right now exporting masses of PPE, and people are annoyed at that. We want PPE from wherever we can get it, and we want lots and lots of it. And that goes for testing kits too, although I'm not sure how much of that we actually produce in the UK. No one ever said, don't you think we should just have our fair share of the limited supply of PPE and no more to make sure poorer countries don't miss out? No, what they say is grab what you can now before some other country gets it. As you can see, the just-in-time supply chains of globalism are long and very complex, but not at all robust. And we just bet our lives on them. Think about that. With the question being, have all those years of financial and social benefits that politicians and big business sold to us as part of globalism just been proved illusory and wiped out within a month? Anyway, if you want to hear more from me, please don't forget to subscribe and also press that little bell, or you won't get any notifications. And if you want to see more of me, buy a mug with my mug on it. So what do you think about all of this? Please share and comment, and thank you for watching.